Let's see here. All right, so getting over into sports. Thank you, David, for the lead into actually getting back on point here. um, a little Week 13 recap in the NFL. We had some interesting games. We had some close games, and we had some upsets. Starting off with one of the close games that I thought should have been a blowout was Saints Falcons. And the Saints ended up pulling this off 21-16, and Falcons made a game of it. For the Saints being one of the best teams in the NFL, they're the leading team in the NFC. It was surprising seeing the Falcons hang in. Now, granted, we don't have Drew Brees for the Saints right now, and let's be honest about it, they have been really lax with the usage of Amara, or excuse me, of Alvin Kamara. Um, so I guess I wouldn't really say I'm surprised so much by the score 21-16. Kamara got his first touchdown in like 3 weeks. It was good to see. They did use him a little bit more than, I mean, they didn't use him for crap the game before, but he only had like 2 or 3 receptions in this game. They really need to get him going again because he can change the way the defense plays the team completely. Alvin Kamara is a multi-dimensional, multi-purpose running back. You know, him and guys like McCaffrey, Le'Veon Bell's prime days, they're guys that you really can't game plan for because they can beat you out of the backfield and they can beat you through the air. And the game is becoming more focused on backs like that. We just are dealing with a couple of running backs right now who are far beyond where most of the running backs in the NFL are. Yes, we have a number of ground and pound running backs still in the NFL. Derrick Henry. Um, but having to look across the field and see Alvin Kamara or a Christian McCaffrey, it's a different monster. And again, those guys can grab the rock and run right up the middle as well, or they can beat you on a 40-yard freaking slant and go. So they really need to get him. They're doing, number one, they're doing the team a disservice by not using him, but they're also doing him a disservice by not using him in the passing game. Hopefully they can get that going. But we should see, from what I understand, I saw a report this morning, Drew Brees might be back next week or the week after, which will be a great thing for Alvin Kamara. Taysom Hill's not throwing it enough to him. Um, the Lions snuck by the Bears. Um, I thought Trubisky was going to lead a comeback in the fourth quarter, and then he fumbled. Yeah, 30-34. I mean, they at least put up 30 points. So I mean, I want to say that's the most points that Mitch Trubisky's scored in a game in this year. I'd have to go back and look. Um, I don't know what's worse, the Trubisky fumble to end the game, or the Chicago defense just getting obliterated and giving up 34 points. I would probably say that the formula that they had to begin with of the defense holding teams under 20 and Trubisky scoring 21 to 24 points, or the defense holding people to 15 points and Trubisky scoring 17, worked. Back-to-back games now, the Bears have given up 24, 25, 26 plus points, Green Bay and now Lions. And the Bears are on a 6-game losing streak. So, Bears lose 30 to 34. I do believe that as well, David. I do believe Trubisky needs a change of scenery. Colts snuck past their rival Texans 26 to 20 in a game that I don't think the Colts were ready for the Texans to be competitive in. Texans fall to 4-8, and you'd have thought 6 games into the season that the Texans were dead in the water, and we're going to get just run the rest of the season. And they made a game of it. Deshaun Watson looked good. J.J. Watt was getting in the backfield. He's a force. Oh, my God. But you can tell he's frustrated. Deshaun Watson's frustrated, which is a good sign, though. You don't want to see the Texans complacent with losing. And J.J. Watt's a competitor. That man's engine just does not stop. It does make me wonder if J.J. Watt is going to be a Texan next year. I know there's been a lot of chatter that the Texans are going to trade him. I don't know if that's doable. I don't know what kind of cap hit he would be. But I do believe that the Texans are in for an overhaul next year if they're going to be competitive. And I heard today they hired a group of people to help with the GM and head coach search for next year. And a few people involved in that panel that they hired is Tony Dungy, Jimmy Johnson, and Texans legend Andre Johnson. So they're putting in the time and the effort into it this time. So we could see a good hire by the Texans. It could happen, and I'm kind of here for it. I'd like to see Deshaun Watson with a good coach and a good GM and have him build around him. The Texans were a playoff team last year, and now they're 4-8. The best they're going to finish is 500, and I don't even see that happening. So, enough about the Texans. Colts won. Phillip Rivers looked okay. I mean, he's Phillip Rivers. But Jonathan Taylor had a good day. He had his best fantasy production of the season. And I've said this before, Jonathan Taylor's a freaking stud, and I think that he's going to have a bright future with Indy as long as he can stay healthy. The Dolphins beating the 2-win Bengals, 19-17. Tua's proved that he can move the ball. A lot of people, when he got benched, were like, "Oh, they need to put in Fitz. They need to move the ball. He can't move the offense. He can't score points." Well, he was moving the ball, threw for 300 yards. That's not the problem. The problem was the scoring points. He had a couple bad drops in the end zone, and they had a couple of blown blocking assignments on some running plays. Otherwise, you take those away and convert them, and this is a 30-point wash. Flat out. Tua looks good, in my opinion. And that's not from looking at stats. That's from watching game film. He's going to be okay. Not worried about it at all. Now, as long as coaching and play calling continues to progress and work with him instead of working against him, like you see in with the Chargers, Tua's going to have a fantastic career. Simple as that. He's definitely got all the tools. Vikings with a last-second field goal over the Jaguars. The Jaguars are 1-11 this year, and the Vikings are making a playoff push. They're 6-6, which we'll get to tonight because our big topic tonight is the look of the playoffs as of right now. And the Vikings squeaked by the Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars are a one-win team, but they have played some football. They're not a team that's just been walked all over and blown out every game. Yeah, they've had a few like that. But they have played some damn good football. Their offense has moved the ball. They've got some talent on that roster. And whoever ends up being the head coach next year, whether it their current regime or they move on, they're going to end up drafting a quarterback next year. And they've got an undrafted free agent rookie running back who is 3rd or 4th in the NFL in rushing yards, James Robinson. Kid's a freaking beast. You add in DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault at wide receiver. You put in a better offensive line, 1 or 2 pieces is all. and a young gunslinger, Jaguars are going to do some damage next year. Coaching aside, Jaguars are going to do some damage next year. Simple as that. Raiders Jets, we were talking about that a little bit ago. 31-28, last second touchdown. Jets just blew coverage, sent out a blitz, ended up getting their defensive coordinator fired Monday morning. I don't believe the Jets are tanking. There's been a lot of people, and I've joked about it myself. The Jets have staked their claim in Trevor Lawrence with that play. Listen, the players aren't going to tank. There's no effing way that professional athletes are going to purposely tank and get embarrassed by another team. They don't do that. Now, does coaching make calls on plays that are less favorable with a certain plan in mind? Sure, that can happen. Could the Jets have won that game? Absolutely. I fully believe that the Jets could have won that game had they kept safety help. But they did an all-out blitz. And they lost the game. It happens. With everything that they've done this year, it makes it look like it was potentially a blown loss on purpose. But I think it's coincidence. And they're under the microscope right now because they're literally one win away from not having the number one pick. And so when you get past 8 losses, you get scrutinized a lot. And those mistakes get looked at as, are they tanking? Is this on purpose? Are they giving up? Are they going after Lawrence? Are they going, there's a lot of chatter about it. But let's be real about it. They're not going, they're not tanking. Those players would not play that way. They'd be wanting out. And some of them do want out. Some of them have been vocal about it. But it's not for tanking. It's just because they don't want to play for Adam Gase. They don't want to be under the current regime. Now Adam Gase will probably end up fired after this year, and he should be. They need to rebuild, and they need to do it with a new head coach, a new defensive coordinator, a new offensive coordinator, and a new GM. Simple as that. Raiders win, keeping their playoff hopes alive. They're now 7-6, which again we're going to get into that in a little bit later. Browns Titans game I'm going to cover in our main. I'm going to cover a little more in depth in a little bit. So we're going to skip that one. Rams Cardinals. Rams pull off this one and actually end up taking the number 1 seed in the NFC West, which we'll get into why a little bit later as well. But Rams actually looked good. Jared Goff was publicly called out by Sean McVay this last week, and Goff answered in a good fashion. Played his ass off. And he proved why he's a starting caliber quarterback. They took down the Cardinals. Kyler Murray had a couple of issues early on. They had a problem moving the ball. DeAndre Hopkins was limited, and when I say limited, he didn't do Hopkins-esque things like 100+ receiving yards, 150 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. But the Rams did a great job of containing the Cardinals' offense. Simple as that. And that's a divisional game. And we see good divisional games in the NFC West especially. I do enjoy watching NFC West games because they always play each other very competitively. We're going to skip the Giants-Seahawks games for now because we're getting into that one a little bit. Eagles-Packers we're also going to get into shortly. Patriots-Chargers. Patriots absolutely routed the Chargers 45-0. Chargers fall to 3-9. Justin Herbert with probably his worst game as a pro, and I've been vocal about this. Anthony Lynn does not want Justin Herbert as his quarterback. Anthony Lynn wants to make the move back to Tyrod Taylor, and Anthony Lynn is willing to submarine a season to prove his point. Anthony Lynn made the statement that he does not fear losing his job, that he does not feel that his job is in jeopardy, and I don't think that he should have that confidence level. The Spanos family, the Spanos regime ownership, may not be the best ownership group in football, but they are under the microscope with their first official year being in LA, in their new location. They need wins. The joke last year was that home games for the Chargers were home games for the visitor because more fans for the visiting teams showed up. Well, now that they're in their new stadium, we don't have fans coming to games because of COVID. They need wins. At 3-9, you're getting embarrassed by your, we'll call them crosstown mirror counterpart, the Rams. They're not going to allow Anthony Lynn to do the team the way he's doing them. So, Patriots embarrass them by 45 points. Chargers can't even muster a field goal. Embarrassing. I think that game alone, when the Spanos family looks at Anthony Lynn's overall body of work, that game alone is going to stand out at the end of the season when it comes time to think about whether they're going to allow Anthony Lynn to continue. I don't think so. Broncos-Chiefs. Chiefs squeaked this one out 22-16. This was a lot closer game than a lot of people anticipated. Broncos actually played fairly well on defense and really limited the downfield passing for Mahomes. I was shocked, and Drew Lock did not play a bad game in the first half. Second half got away from him, but Broncos could look better next year. They could. They've got some good talent at wide receiver. Defense needs some help back in the secondary, but they got a pass rush, and with Von Miller coming back next year, they could be a contender in the AFC West. So Chiefs go up 11-1. Broncos fall to 4-8, basically out of playoff contention. Last night's games, we're going to skip the Steelers Washington game. We're going to talk about that here shortly. Bills 49ers. I don't want to say the Bills routed the 49ers. I mean, it was a 10-point game, but Bills looked in control of that game the entire time. To argue that is not watching the game. Josh Allen looked every bit of an MVP candidate. Enough said. It didn't even take having Stephon Diggs score 200 yards. I mean, they literally just did anything they wanted against the 49ers. They ran the ball, they passed the ball. It was a Bills game the entire time. And then tonight we've also, obviously we've got the reason why we're doing the show tonight at 3 o'clock versus 6 o'clock. We've got the Ravens and the Cowboys, so we'll be getting into that one here in a little bit. You guys will be watching it. So some of our topics, so we skipped over some of these games, and for a particular reason, because I was going to get a little in depth. Number one, what happened today, the announcement that Jalen Hurts is going to start next week versus New Orleans. Carson Wentz was benched in the middle of the third quarter in the Packers-Eagles game. Carson Wentz was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL through 13 weeks, and he was sacked 4 times in 3.5 quarters yesterday. So Wentz finally gets to take a break from getting sacked. Guess what? Next week, unless he gets back on the field, Wentz won't get sacked next week. That's going to be Jalen Hurts taking that beating. Hurts was sacked twice yesterday in a quarter and a half of play. And he's also through the what's become traditional Philadelphia interception. Wentz, no interceptions, but he also didn't move the ball. He only threw for like 69 or 70 yards or whatever it was. Jalen Hurts passed over 100 yards in the quarter and a half with an interception, a touchdown, and was sacked twice. So I don't know if this game was the game to put Hurts in. in the NFC East, every team is still in it. That's how bad the NFC East is right now. So basically, what Doug Peterson is saying with the New Orleans Saints game coming up, that Jalen Hurts gives them the best opportunity to stay competitive against the Saints, against the number one team in the NFC, against one of the top 5 defenses in the NFL. The Saints rank 4th in the NFL in sacks. That does not bode well for the Eagles quarterback. They also rank 5th, tied for 5th, in interceptions. That does not bode well for the Philly quarterback. And you're going to put Jalen Hurts out there against New Orleans defense. Give me a freaking break. Now, I'm all for seeing what Jalen Hurts brings to the table. But against New Orleans? That's just foolish. You are literally sacrificing your lamb. That's exactly what's going to happen. Now, if Hurts comes out, slings it, looks good, moves around in the pocket, reduces sacks, no turnovers, throws a couple of big touchdowns, great. But this is the New Orleans Saints top 5 defense. I wouldn't expect... I mean, Tom Brady couldn't do it. So now you expect a rookie quarterback with virtually limited chemistry with his entire offense to come in and fight for a playoff spot against one of the best teams in the NFL. There's a reason why the Eagles, everybody says the Eagles are mismanaged. This is a clear point. This is a clear reason why that is said. Bad decision. Next week, go for it. This week, wouldn't do it. Now, I've said this before. I fully stand behind Carson Wentz. I do believe that the Eagles have done a complete disservice to him. Field Yates tweeted out earlier today about how Carson Wentz in 2019, in December, fought through, led the team to a playoff berth, won the division, all this kind of stuff. December of 2020 is benched. And that's how he's rewarded. My addition to that, well, Carson Wentz did all that in December of last year and was rewarded with Jalen Hurts getting drafted in the second round. He wasn't rewarded with a second-round weapon. He wasn't rewarded with a second-round offensive lineman. They need, this year, they've been struggling at wide receiver. They've been struggling at running back. They've been struggling at offensive line. Those 3 exact same positions they were struggling with last year as well. Oh, yes, they drafted Jalen Reagor in the first round. Oh, so let's just stop getting him tools because we made a first-round draft pick for him. That's not a smart move. You bring in another quarterback. You just rewarded him with a contract extension, saying, Carson, we were going to make you the wealthiest quarterback in Eagles history. We're going to give you this 4-year extension, and we're going to pay you a ton because we love you. And then 8 months later, turn around and draft his potential replacement. After he took your team to the playoffs, winning the NFC East. I said the Jets were mismanaged. Eagles are a train wreck. All right, the other one of the other 3 games I was going to talk about. Giants taking down the Seahawks. I know Seahawk fans, we're going to relive this a little bit, but this isn't all bad. I said this during the game that the Giants took the strength of the Seahawks defense and turned it against them, which was the run defense. Now I want to clear something up here. The Giants ran for 190 yards against the Seahawks defense at 6.1 yards per carry. Okay? 6.1 yards per carry. The Hawks defense strength of being against the run is not the truth. The Hawks defense, the reason why they play well against the run, or why the numbers look good against the run, is because most teams have to abandon the run against the Seahawks. When a team can put up points in bunches, much like the Kansas City Chiefs, when a team can put up numbers in bunches and rack up the score, teams are forced to abandon the run in order for quick strikes. We all know this. When you used to play the Patriots with Tom Brady, when Tom Brady threw 50 touchdowns or whatever, 45 touchdowns, whatever it was, they were the best run defense in the NFL. Why is that? Because teams had to abandon the run after the first quarter in order to try to keep pace. Well, that's what you're dealing with the Hawks this year. The Hawks defense was taking advantage of the opposite team having to throw the ball a ton, which is also why their pass defense has been absolutely abysmal. Because the quarterbacks they're playing against have to throw 500 frickin' yards in order to keep up with Russell Wilson. So the Hawks offense, their prolific offense that has been absolutely fantastic, and Russell Wilson's been amazing this year, short of a small handful of games, their defense was not built to withstand that sort of absolute throttling by other offenses. So the run game, in a close game, then becomes exposed. So some stats for you with the Seahawks defense. The Seahawks have allowed 16 rushing touchdowns this season, which is tied for fourth most in the NFL. And it's the most among teams that have allowed less than 1,450 rushing yards total. The Hawks have allowed 1,172 rushing yards on the season, which is fifth best in the NFL. Okay? Fifth best in the NFL, but 16 rushing touchdowns. There's only 13 teams that have allowed more than 1,450 rushing yards total. Okay? 16 rushing touchdowns. And they're fifth most in the NFL. So, again, the Seahawks defense was not built to shut down teams the way the Legion of Boom is used to. And Ken Norton Jr. has not adjusted. Ken Norton Jr. has not figured that out. He still thinks that he's got Earl Thomas. He still thinks that he's got Richard Sherman. He still thinks that he's got, Cam Chancellor. That he's, all these guys that were the Legion of Boom that shut down receivers, that could sack the quarterback, keep the pressure on him, that could stop the run. You couldn't run against that defense. You couldn't pass against that defense. Lockdown corners, safety over the top that could light somebody up and jar the ball loose. Ken Norton hasn't adjusted because he doesn't have those players. So the offense playing really well actually turns into a disservice on the defense. They need to fix that if they want to make a playoff run. Because the Giants should not have done what they did. Now, the Giants only passed for, 120 yards? Not even. I don't even think it was Colt McCoy. It was less than 120 yards. But the defense just took it in chunks. Because the defense wasn't used to, especially in the second half, the defense wasn't used to having to play the run. It's a shitty thing to deal with. But if your offense isn't clicking, and it hasn't really been for the Seahawks over the last half of the season, teams are going to catch on to the run game a little bit more. And that's what the Giants did. The Giants looked at it and was like, nope, we're just going to hit it. So, upset, but Seahawks are still in good position in the standings. I don't see them going anywhere. All right, switching gears over to... we got 4 games we were going to talk about. My bad. Browns, Titans. If you didn't watch the Browns-Titan game, you missed a lot of scoring. Let's be real. Browns-Titan game was was a lot to take in. The Browns were electric in the first half. Baker Mayfield threw 4 touchdowns in the first half alone. The score was 38-7 at halftime. Okay? 38-7. The Browns put up 38 points on the Titans with a final score of 41-35. Browns just opened that door right back up for the Titans in the second half. Browns completely fell asleep, almost lost the game. If it wasn't for the Titans' struggles in the first half, that would have been a Titans game. Just the Browns just completely coasted in the second half. They lost it all. Baker should have kept the foot on the gas. Their offensive coordinator should have kept the foot on the gas. Freddie Kitchen should have kept the foot on the gas. You don't let teams that are balanced offenses like the Titans, who have a very good quarterback in Ryan Tannehill and a really good, damn good running back, possibly one of the best in the NFL in Derrick Henry, you don't allow teams like that back in the door. And that's exactly what they did. They opened the door back up for him, and the Titans exposed him. You can't do that. The Browns took Derrick Henry out of the game early. That was their game plan, and they did a good job of it. Derrick Henry only finished with 60 rushing yards. Now, one of the things they did out the gate was they caught him to fumble. You get a good running back to fumble early, you can sometimes get in their head. Okay? 15 carries, 60 yards. 4 yards per clip. It's not horrible. It's not Derrick Henry-esque, that's for damn sure. But they took Derrick Henry out of the game plan because they put up so many dang points right out the gate. The problem was they didn't keep the foot on the gas in the second half. Corey Davis ended up going off with a monster game. Why? Because they had to throw the ball to keep up with him. Okay? Corey Davis, 11 receptions, 182 yards, and a touchdown. Massive day. And if it wasn't for A.J. Brown having 2 fumbles, one of which, thankfully, the Titans recovered in the end zone for a touchdown, A.J. Brown had 2 fumbles. A.J. Brown's 1 fumble was recovered by the Browns. And then Derrick Henry's fumble. They ended up having 3 turnovers in that game. 2 fumbles, 1 INT by Tannehill. 3 turnovers by the Titans. Cleveland played good execution football in the first half. Great execution football in the first half. Okay? Let's call a spade here. In the second half, punt, turnover, punt. Okay? Cleveland should have had that game by 40 points. If the Titans could have mounted more than one offensive drive in the first half, Cleveland would have lost that game. If the Titans could have avoided a Derrick Henry fumble, they'd have won that game. If the Titans would have not had A.J. Brown fumble in the first half, the Titans could have won that game. And the Titans would be in firm control of the AFC South. Now they're tied back with the Colts again. But if you see Cleveland come out like that in more games against good teams, and they can pull off more wins like that, we might finally see a Cleveland Browns team that's out of the doghouse. Can they do it, though, is the problem. Can they play like that for more than a half? Because so far this season, even with 9 wins, I have not seen Cleveland put together a complete game. Okay? Oh, let's see. All right, last game, last night. Well, not last night's last game, but last game we're going to talk about individually was the 2 o'clock game here on the West Coast, Steelers-Washington. That one hurt, not going to lie. But you know what? It is what it is. I never expected the Steelers to go 16-0. Especially not with the flaws that they've had the last few weeks. There was some poor officiating in the game, but I'm not blaming that. That should have never even come down to it. There was some weird, just the field goal at the end of the half, for example. Yeah, the time should have expired. It is what it is. It was only 3 points. Just bizarre. My biggest issues that I have with that game, number one, the red zone fiasco. Steelers couldn't punch the ball in on 5 tries from the 1 yard line. 1/2. 5 tries. Stuffed, stuffed, stuffed. Failed attempt on a tackle trying to catch the ball. That play should have never even been called. And then stuffed. Not one time in those 5 plays called did they hand the ball to Derek Watt. You brought in a fullback to lead the way for your running backs. You brought in a fullback that can punch the ball in for 1 yard. And he did not touch the ball one time in 5 plays. Dumbest series of play calls I've ever seen. The other thing that drove me crazy, you have Chase Claypool at 6'4"? You have James Washington at 6'1" and can jump. And you have Eric Ebron, who they couldn't cover. He's a tight end who can post up and he can jump. And you didn't once even try a fade or a post up or a back of the end zone throw. Nothing. None of that on 5 plays on the 1 yard line. And you couldn't score. And it cost you the game. Bad offensive coordinating right there. Bad play calling. My other issue was the drop passes. Steelers had 7 dropped passes. The Steelers lead the league in the last 2 weeks. 14 dropped passes between the Ravens game and the Washington game. You want to talk about a way to kill your momentum in a game? You want to talk about a way to gas your defense, which we'll get into that in a second? Drop passes. Momentum killers. Drive killers. Clock stoppers. Drop passes. A team that's normally sure-handed, drop passes. 14 in 2 weeks. Steelers now lead the NFL by more than 10 dropped passes. Philadelphia Eagles were known for that. It's like Pittsburgh contracted a virus, the dropsies. Need to go get some medication for that. It's not good. They're not going to win games dropping that many passes. Mike Tomlin said it today. Guys that are dropping passes, if they're going to drop passes like that, we're going to put guys on the field that are going to catch those opportunities. Now, is it that Deontay is getting too much volume? Maybe. I don't know. Deontay's a stud. Eric Ebron's had a case of the dropsies since he's been drafted. You got Vance McDonald, who's just as good of a pass catcher, and he has not had the drop issues. Drops. Huge, huge killer for that team. If it wasn't for at least 3 of those drops, the Steelers would have put up 28 points. Okay? You reduce the drops from 7 to 2, you're looking at a 28-point score. One of them was in the end zone. Got to kill those drops. Because of that, defense was gassed. You could tell in the second half. Defense could not stop Washington. And it was because they were running all over the field and they were gassed. You could see it. You could see it on that 30-yard, 3rd and 14 conversion. Minka got up and he was gassed. TJ was gassed. Hilton was gassed. And those are guys that fly. Well, first 6 drives of the game, punt, 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 punt. You're not extending drives. The defense was gassed. And then the other issue, just can't run the ball. Now, James Conner is supposed to come back this week. Marquise Pouncey is supposed to be back this week. Maybe that'll help. But if memory serves me correctly, week before the Ravens, James Conner and Marquise Pouncey both played. They only put up 60 rushing yards total. No physicality. Offensive line's not winning the battles. Simple as that. Got to run the ball. Steelers want to make a playoff push. Now, I will say this. And again, I didn't expect the Steelers to go 16-0. And a lot of these games that they lost yesterday were games that they would have lost every year for the last however many years. And they were winning those types of games earlier this season. I knew it was going to catch up to them at some point. Now, hopefully, this kind of brings the level of urgency up and brings the satisfaction of the season down and pushes them a little bit more. I'd rather see them now in week 13 get this out of the way and fix it and move forward, just like what the Seahawks can do. Fix it and move forward so you can make your playoff push. It's time. They better do it. You have another week like this, you're going to lose your first place. Which, tie-in. Here it comes.